welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. I'm your host, Mari Riesberg. Over the past several years, I've combined my degrees in acting and somatic psychology to share my sustaining creativity techniques with performers. And now I've decided to share it with a bigger audience that includes you. I believe we are all creative, and this podcast is all about that. I'll be interviewing people from all backgrounds, ages, and creativity experiences to share just how creative we all are. Today, I'll be chatting with Tyler Boeh, an award-winning beatboxing stand-up comedian with past appearances on NESN Comedy All-Stars, Celebrity Name Game, and 2 seasons of Laughs on Fox. Tyler has laid the groundwork for his growing success. In 2018, Tyler's second album, Full Circle, debuted at number 2 on the Billboard comedy charts. Please enjoy Tyler Boeh. Welcome to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. Today I'm here with Tyler Boeh. He and I went to high school together, Grant High School in Portland, Oregon, and we sang in choirs together. We did theater together, and I have so many memories of your car in high school. So welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited for you to be here.
It's my pleasure. That last note about the car either makes it sound ominous or very intriguing.
Exact. That's what we're going for here. Luring people in. But welcome. Well,
it's great to be here and great to see you. Yeah.
It is great to see you as well. And why don't you just tell all our listeners a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
All right, so let's get to the important stuff. After high school, I no longer have the car.
Oh.
No, I had a big old work van, and I unfortunately had an oil leak, and I blew up the engine. But so yeah, we did a lot of theater and choir stuff together, and I went to University of Oregon, and I kind of kept going with theater and improv, and I got into an a cappella group called On the Rocks at University of Oregon, and I continued to sing in that through college. And then I kind of always wanted to try stand-up, but I was busy doing improv and theater, so I didn't really pursue it until after college. And then I kind of made the jump, just went to my first open mic, and as soon as I started stand-up, I just thought, wow, this is the thing. It's you've got creative control over the writing, the performing, but also there's the business aspect of trying to get gigs and getting yourself booked, and it's sort of all on you. But it's fun and challenging. So I've been doing stand-up for I don't know, about 15 years now, I guess, and have bounced around a bit. I lived in Boston for 5 years and Los Angeles for 5 years. And then back in Portland now. I'm married, 2 kids. My son is 7, my daughter's 5, and my wife, Miranda, is a nurse practitioner. So we're back in Portland and just kind of, loving life and navigating this year the best we can.
Nice. Oh my gosh, I guess I didn't realize you were in Boston and LA and then back to Portland, but that you bi-coastal adventures.
Yeah, the move to the East Coast was super culture shock as like a born and raised Portland person. Like it was the weather, it was the personalities, the energy, the sports culture, so much, but it really grew on me. So I loved it in Boston, and I'm also as a performer, I'm sort of glad that I went from Portland to Boston to LA.
Yeah.
Because it was sort of it seemed like a progression of larger, like a little bit larger scene to Hollywood, which is obviously like scene. I think if I would have made the jump from Portland straight to LA, I probably would have been a little bit more overwhelmed by the jump in just the size of the scene in LA is just huge.
Yeah. And I love that you just decided to go to an open mic night and that was it, like sold on stand-up comedy.
Yeah, it's something like I said that I sort of always wanted to do, and I'd always been performing in some capacity, whether it was theater or music or whatever.
Hmm.
And I always enjoyed stand up, but yeah, once I started doing it, I just I think people because I used to I've hosted open mics throughout my kind of years in comedy,
Hmm.
and I always tell new comics that I think most comics once they go, once or twice or a couple times, they'll realize very quickly whether it's something that they like are like, oh my god, I have to keep doing this, or if they don't like it, like they'll figure out pretty quick whether it's yes or no.
Yeah.
And like I don't know if you've heard this before, like in with other creative people, but something that always stuck with me in this theater class I took at University of Oregon was just the idea that like as an actor, and this applies to all kinds of I guess creative people, but like as an actor, they were like if you can do anything else, go do that.
Right.
Like you don't act because you like it. You have to act because like this is what you have to do. And that's I think how stand up is too. Like
Hmm.
cuz a lot of times people go, "Oh, what would you tell a young comic or someone who's interested in getting into stand up?" I'm like, "Don't." And I I don't mean to like squash anyone's dreams. I just mean that it's so challenging. It's so
Hmm.
hard and it's fun and it can be a hobby. It can totally be a hobby. But if you want to like try to make a living and turn it into a career, then it takes time and just I mean, it's work, but when you love it, it doesn't feel like work, but it is work. It's a long journey.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it. And yet, if you love doing it and you can't think of doing anything else, then it's the thing to keep doing. But yes, I have heard that in acting school. Like if you can see yourself doing something else, go do it. And if you hate it,
Yeah.
maybe come back to acting. But try keep pursuing your dreams and seeing what else is out there, and you'll find whatever is your niche or your passion by trying lots and lots of things. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why this year has been like a very big challenge because um, I I think that there's a lot of people who your career doesn't have to define you, and your career doesn't necessarily have to fulfill uh, you as a person, like mentally, spiritually. Like
mm-hmm.
you can just have like a job that's where you make money, and then you can go do other things in your free time. But for a lot of artists and creative type people, so much of that is all tied together. So it's like this is how we make our living, but it's also how we express ourselves and also how we it's like wrapped up in our identity. So for this year for me, like not being able to work has been a challenge like financially, but it's also been like I don't get to do the thing that makes me me.
Yeah.
Um so and I also, no one's just one thing. We're all very complex people, but it's like it's been a challenge to figure out, all right, how do I do this? So I have been doing a lot of online shows, but also the cool thing is I feel like the challenges of this year have pushed me to be like, all right, what can I do short of live shows? Like what else can I do? Can I so does that look like producing more online content or writing more? One of the questions that you had, I think, was something along the lines of what things have challenged you in preventing you from being creative and stuff.
Yeah.
And I know for myself in years past that I have like technology and has been a stumbling block for me.
Mm-hmm.
So like uh sometimes thinking of like sketch ideas or video ideas, but I'm not, you go, oh well, I'm not, I don't know how to edit, or I don't have this, HD super great camera yet. So let me wait till I get these like logistical things figured out, or I'll have to pay somebody to come in and do the production. But like those things can become excuses of like, oh, why I didn't do this thing is because I couldn't figure out the technology, or I uh and then this year it's just like, all right, well, forget that. We got to just figure it out. and
Yeah.
go for it. So, but uh, yeah, I've had an idea too about well, sort of like a longer form show, like not so much stand up, maybe like a one person show.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, something that would require like more writing and sort of prep work even before I got to like the performance level. Because right now, obviously, I couldn't put on a theater show
Right.
indoors at least, and we're not in the Northwest now. The window has closed on outdoor performances, or at least it is closing very quickly.
Yeah.
But the idea of working on sort of this uh, more theatrical kind of one person show, it's like, all right, I can do a lot of writing
Mm-hmm.
in my own time before I even get to the point of performing. So
Awesome. That's so cool. But like, what a creative way to utilize the time that you have available. And I completely hear you on the challenged technology. I too have issues around the microphone and how to do a podcast virtually, etc., and trying to navigate that, and just decided, I'm going to have to figure it out and learn as I go, and that's okay, and I'm going to make mistakes and I'm going to learn from it, and we're going to still create something fun in the process. So
totally, it's weird when you are both creative but also I'm not a perfectionist by any means, but I think a lot of people like we go, oh, I don't want to put this out there because it's not finished yet, or it's not perfect yet, or it's not. And sometimes you just got to go. You just got to wade in and go. All right, I'm gonna get started, and this might suck, but we'll figure it out as we go. Because there's a lot of that. I mean, you can learn from people who've gone before you, and you can do your research and stuff. But at a certain point, it's like when you first start stand up, and it's or anything else, I guess. I used to tell younger comics like, because they'd be like, oh, have you ever bombed? And I'm like, oh, are you kidding? You will struggle and you will bomb and you will have awful shows, and that's part of it. And of course you would. Like, why would you expect? Like, you got to allow yourself to suck like at first, because I would always say, like, how arrogant would it be to like expect to be amazing at something, enter this new field. Like, I don't play hockey, but like, how arrogant would it be to me be like, let me throw some skates on and I'm just gonna be like, I'm gonna be awesome at this, I know it.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. And yet,
yeah.
on some level, some people are like,
Oh, hush. No.
no, it's true. It's true. But
um
for the most part, yes, I think we got to try and fail and learn from our failings. If we never fail, where do we learn? Where do we grow? That's, I think, a really important part of it.
for sure. And some people are just like, some people have to learn through the process,
Agreed.
like, I mean, I don't know, there's so many things like that in life that it's like you can do some prep work. Like, I mean, you can watch hours and hours and hours of stand up, but if you want to do it, you can read books about stand up, but like, you eventually got to just get up there and do it. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
think about all the videos and books and research you could do about swimming, but if you don't get in the water, it's like you have no idea.
Absolutely. Oh, it's so true. All right. Well, now that we've gone on our adventures of challenges and where we're headed, I'm going to rein us back in and circle back to kind of just asking this question. When you think of what it means to be creative for you, what comes to mind?
Oh, I mean, obviously, since I do stand up, so much of what creativity, my first thought is humor. It's being funny
Mhm.
and making people laugh. But I also think it's just, I mean, I've done other types of performing, and I think that it just, I mean, whether it's doing art or uh, you know, like any, I don't know, any kind of, like I used to break dance and I don't really do that anymore, but like just expressing yourself in whatever way
Mhm.
that is for you. And my for me it's sort of narrowed into humor at this point. But when I was younger, I think I used to do so much more, whether it was like dance and singing and all that stuff, and I appreciate all that stuff and I miss that. But for me it's really kind of narrowed into like stand up, but also humor, and that can be anything you want.
Mhm.
Like you don't have to limit yourself, because stand up is can be very, there are people within stand up that think that it's just, you have to be a monologist, you have to stand there and talk. But there's also comics that juggle or play music, and I have friends that are magicians that are very, funny. Their
Mhm.
whole act is hilarious, but it's just like it can be, whatever. So even there's people that even put up like roadblocks of creativity within this like field of humor.
Yeah, I love that idea of humor as a experience and expression of creativity, because I don't think, I think a lot of people, they think, oh, I'm not a funny person, but like even a non stand-up comedian can be funny or be humorous and
Totally.
sharing a story. And so that idea of that humor is a creative expression and creative experience, I think is, I love it. I think it's an awesome way to view creativity.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, you
I
talked,
I
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think so many so many times people, or so often, like we grow up adults and we just like stifle, like it's like adults are like, so, oh, I can't draw. If you ask a kid, hey, can you draw a horse? Of course I can draw a horse. This is draw a horse.
Yeah.
And then adults, oh, I'm not good at drawing. Or adults, like, I've never met a kid that's not funny. Kids are
Mm-hmm.
funny. They're silly. They're goofy. And I don't know. I think people sort of like lose that at some point. Maybe they grow out of it, or they're told to. They're stifled maybe from other people outside saying, "Oh, don't be so."
But I like that idea. Kids are funny, and as we grow up, for whatever reason, whether, like you said, people tell us, oh, you can't do that, or you're old and you're too old for that anymore, or you just get the feedback from other people that it's not appropriate or not the right time, and then you internalize that as an adult, and that translates into you thinking, oh, I am not funny or creative, etc., etc. So you were talking about when you were younger, um, doing breakdancing and other things. And I'm really curious, when you think about being a kid, what's your earliest memory of being creative?
Um, it just seems like something that's was always there. I have siblings, so I have a twin sister, an older brother, and an older sister. My twin sister and I were incredibly close, and I just remember always making up games and just imaginative play and stuff like that. But also some really early memories of, we had some close family friends, and the mom was a school teacher, so she was very creative, very engaging to the kids. But when we would get together, we would take like family trips. We'd go camping with them, or
Mm-hmm.
and they had two girls, and the parents would play cards, and the kids would always we'd always end up doing like putting on a play, or we would do a kids little talent show for the adults. We'd be juggling, or doing doing some ridiculous thing.
I love it. That's
So those were some of my early memories of like,
being creative. How old were you?
um I don't know. I mean, I feel like I have a terrible memory, so I mean I was probably 6, 7, 8, like
Okay.
uh yeah.
Elementary school. Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
But
feel
some of
like,
this is on home video, so it's on
oh,
record.
I love it. I too have those, production quality from the shoulder camcorder videos.
Nice.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love hearing the memories that people have about being creative and how old they were, because I don't know if that like leads to being creative more in your adult life or whatnot, but it's been fun to hear the stories that people have shared. And I imagine as a stand-up comedian, you pull inspiration from lots of different things. But when you think about who or what inspires you these days, what's on your mind?
Oh, I mean, generally, I'm inspired by anybody who is actively pursuing and making a career out of their passion, no matter what it is. So, I obviously know tons of stand-up comics, and I'm friends with lots of comics, but I'm also inspired by people I see that are doing music or that are producing artwork, or because I know that even though it's probably not the same road or the same path, that it's just like I know there's that struggle there and that challenge, and so I'm amazed by anybody that's doing that. Um, and I don't know. I wasn't one of those kids that grew up on stand up. I was much more influenced, I think, by Saturday Night Live and those type of performers, like more sketch and that kind of stuff. So I always loved that. But right now, I don't know. There's so many great stand-ups that are working, and we've seen, I think, recently that stand-up can be like this broader spectrum of like what it means,
Mm-hmm.
you have people that are just telling jokes and being funny, and then you have people like Hannah Gatsby that are taking a much more serious and sort of heartfelt approach. And it's inspiring to see, like, okay, it can be this, but it can also be something way over here and be this. So I don't know, I love it all.
That's great. And how would you like, what category of stand-up comedy do you put yourself in?
um that's the most common question for stand-up interviews, and the toughest to answer, because
You're
it's sort of
welcome.
like you have to like look at yourself and go, well, yeah. I always just say funny, hopefully. Um, but um, I use beatboxing in my act, because I talk a lot about music and different stuff like that. So that's one of those things that like stands out.
Mm-hmm.
If people have seen me perform maybe once or something, they go, "Oh, that's the beatbox guy," or whatever, and which is great, because you kind of want to have a hook and go, "Oh, it's anything that makes you memorable is fantastic." But I also don't want to be I don't want to be sort of like uh, typecast, or like narrowed into this. Oh, I'm just the beatbox guy. Because sometimes when I do shorter sets, a lot of times it's like I don't get into all that, and then if I don't, people are like, oh, you didn't do the beatbox thing or whatever. Then I feel like I let people down. So it's like you can't, it's wonderful, but you can't win, right? It's like I'm sure, uh, and I have comedian friends that like do impressions, but they're also just very funny with their stand-up. So if they don't do impressions, then it's that same kind of thing. So that's definitely one of the things that people remember about me. But I don't know. I talk a lot about just my life personally, and having a family and that kind of stuff. So um,
Yeah, it's eclectic and you tell a lot of stories. At least that's been my experience watching your stand-up.
yeah, I also, the other thing is too, like, it's interesting because I tend to work pretty clean usually,
Mhm.
and that's just kind of by my nature of my own personality and who I am and how I am. But also, uh, again, it's interesting because that can become sort of limiting in a sense, where sometimes I have, um, my stuff tends to be very clean and often really positive too, because I remember when I first started stand up, so many comics were very negative. Oh, don't you hate when? Or you know what drives me crazy is, and I feel like it's almost easier to get a laugh and sometimes connect with people in this kind of sense of anger or outrage or negativity. And I remember seeing a few comics early on that were very positive, like, "Oh, I do, you know what I love, or you know what gets me excited, or isn't this amazing?" And I thought, that's that's such a different take, and it's actually harder, I think,
Mm-hmm.
um, to sort of be like positive and happy, because like if you come out and you're like, "Hey, my life's really good, things are going, they're working out really well," people are like, who's this guy?
Right.
Uh, but I try to stay positive, but there's also sometimes I have ideas, or I write things that are darker, or are come from a more negative place, and then I often question, like, oh, is this on brand for me? And then that feels like a yucky question as an artist, to be like, oh, now I'm like, ugh, you know what I mean? You're like, I don't,
Yeah.
because now you're censoring your own self. So if I set myself up to be this clean comic, then I go, okay, can I tell this joke if it has more adult content, or is this gonna be too much of a departure from the sort of persona that I've created? So uh, that's tough. Like, you never, I think, want to define yourself too much, because then are you limiting what you can do creatively?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really great question to ask and to think about. I've never really thought about comics taking a more negative versus positive slant to their stand-up routine, but when you were talking about it, it absolutely is true that, don't you hate when this happens, or let me tell you about this horrible day I had, or versus the I'm having a great day. And what do we go, where do we go from there?
Well, and you might understand, as a, like, if you studied, like, psychology and working as a therapist or whatever, that a lot of that is very it's sort of, I don't know the word I'm looking for. It's almost like biological. The Like, humor is often how people deal with pain and fear and stuff like that. So um, it makes sense that you know that comedy, a lot of comedy comes from, like, there's, you've probably heard the equation, like, tragedy plus time equals comedy. It's like,
Right.
let me tell you about this terrible thing that happened, and we can all laugh about it because it didn't turn out that bad, or look, I survived, it's fine, or whatever, but we can all laugh about it. So it's it's definitely a way to connect people, to come from sort of negativity or pain, and then be able to make light of it. And it's a powerful thing to do. But there are also a lot of comics that just it's negative in a sense of, like, it's dark, and it's trying to be shocking for the sake of being shocking, or just mean spirited. And that's not the kind of comedy I want to do. Hey, my wife, like, uh, I don't want to be that person, or people that, that every joke is has a victim or is punching down. And uh, to me, that's it's mean spirited often, and it's also it's easy. It's cheaper.
Fair enough. Yeah. And it sounds like you enjoy the challenge of keeping it positive and light and still connecting with people and making it funny and having that experience on stage. So that's great. I love watching your comedy when I have seen it on the specials that have pop up every once in a while on the social media. It's been super fun to see you on stage performing in this capacity, because in high school it was a very different capacity of performing, and I feel like I got some of it when we would be in, like, the theater productions backstage, just like waiting to go on stage, and there were opportunities for the, like,
Oh, totally.
comedy show to happen.
Yes, just like hamming it up backstage, or in between rehearsals and stuff like that. But yeah, I think back on, like, in high school, just doing, like, skits for like a pep rally, or um, doing little, yes, like preferred whatever for different assemblies and stuff like that. And oh man, I look back and you go, I hope that we didn't do anything that was off color, and I'm sure I did. Like, I'll probably get canceled or whatever, but
No,
those were different times.
and there's no recording of it, so that saves a lot of the stuff that happened before social media.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you also have this really robust community, not only in like family, but also in stand-up comedy. And I'm curious how your community impacts or influences your creativity.
Um, yeah, that's a great question. Stand-up is interesting because it is a very, um, you know, um, individual sort of, performance or art thing. Because you ideally you write all your own material, and it comes from your own, um, sort of your own perspective, and then you do the like and it can also be very isolating in just the career aspect of traveling. Like, you spend a lot of time on the road by yourself, or you're in a hotel room, or you're on flights to the middle of nowhere. So it can be kind of isolating in that sense. So there is definitely a community. Portland has a strong scene, I think, and they try to foster that. But also with scenes and community comes sometimes drama and sort of infighting and that kind of stuff. But how it influences creative directly, I have a very small group of comics that I talk with on a regular basis, and sometimes even write with. And that usually looks like, hey, I've got this idea, let me tell you what I'm working on. Like, maybe they'll help change a word, or like, oh, have you thought about coming at it from this angle? Or so ultimately, I write all my own material, but I'll get together with buddies on the phone or whatever, and we'll bounce ideas off each other, and that can be super helpful. So directly, um, there's that. But actually, for me, the best people to write with are comics that have very different styles or very different perspectives than me, because they'll help me look at ideas from a different angle. Um, and then indirectly, there is this greater scene in Portland, and it definitely influences, like, uh, just, I think, there's a good positive sort of pressure right now in comedy to to not to not down, and to not do stuff that's like off color or hurtful, and I think that's fantastic. And there's definitely, uh, that's been going on for a couple years, but it's just like, for me, where my comedy started from and where it's always sort of been, I'm like, oh, this isn't going to be a challenge for me necessarily, because there's definitely people within the Portland comedy scene, or the larger comedy scene for that matter too, that would, are a little bit more dark or edgy, or I want to say what I want to say, and people can kind of, pressure them, or I'm not going to book you on my show because you're, and they have every right to do that. But that's the way that I think people within that comedy community can definitely exert pressure on other people to be like, hey, maybe you don't do that joke, or you don't do that kind of material. And then that's just, obviously, that's advice people can, or pressure, or a suggestion that people can either take or not take, but it's there.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's great that you try and surround yourself with people who have a different perspective or a different view to get that experience. And I imagine that you get influence from conversations that you have with other comics who are also friends, or material that you use from family or other people that you cross paths with. And I think that, just thinking about, your community impacts your creativity, whether we're aware of it or not. And
Yeah, and for me too, as someone who's, working as a sort of career comic, the other aspect too is the on the business side, um, looking at other comics and seeing comics that are maybe taking advantage of different like avenues or whatever. Like when I see a comic that's really doing well with you know what they're posting live videos on Instagram, or comics that are even using TikTok. I'm not on TikTok, but I see you see other performers that are doing really well, and you go, well, maybe that's something I should look into. Or people that are just utilizing technology better than I am, or it's like, how can I learn from what other people are having success with? So a lot of times there's the creative inspiration, but then
Mhm.
also the sort of logistical stuff as a working person. You go, okay, well, look at these other people that are having success with this thing or that thing. It's like, oh, that I wasn't even thinking about that, or maybe these are things I should be doing. So that's that's always a challenge too, of like combining, is my stand up, is it sharp, and is it funny, is it fun, and then also am I doing all the things business wise that can help me.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And I feel similar with like the world of podcasting, that trying to navigate and put those, wearing different hats and getting inspiration, or being influenced by other people who have just started podcasts or doing that as well. But as you were talking, I think throughout the time we've chatted, you've shared bits and pieces about kind of everyday issues. But I'm curious if you have any examples of an everyday issue where you have used creativity to solve it.
Every stinking day. I think, no, as a dad, that is absolutely your friend with two young kids. Like every day, I think there's an opportunity to be creative with them, literally, like doing arts and crafts or doing music or playing. But like also, you have to be so creative to all right, it's time to brush your teeth. Uh, and I'm gonna get my kids who maybe don't want to brush their teeth, how am I going to get them to brush their teeth? And then how do I get them to do it for 2 minutes? And it's like, all right, well, let me find a song that's 2 minutes long, and we got to brush our teeth for the whole song. And, or I'll make up a song. And so I do make up a lot of songs. I don't know if you ever narrate your life where you're like, what do you want for lunch at school today? Just tell me anything you want, please, and I will make it. And then, my daughter's like, I want a peanut butter and jelly. And I'm like, peanut butter and jelly on the bread. That's what she said. It's going on the bread. The peanut, it's like all day long. This is what I do. Uh, so there's always, just get him in the car. Like, there's always an opportunity, like, oh, we gotta, the bricks are lava. Like, so every day there's something where I'm like, and not only just like, can I do this, but can I make this more fun than just help me pick your room up? Like, music is always, it's like, all right, got 2 songs worth of cleaning. And I'll let my kids pick the songs, and we'll just, and then when the songs are over, and it's great, because if I'm just like, hey, can you pick up your room? They'll be like, oh, I gotta pick my room up. Like, but I just like 2 songs. Give me 2 songs of clean, and then we're done. And I don't know. Those are like the types of things that are just on a daily basis.
That's amazing, though. It's like I will stream of consciousness sing to my cat like you sing to your kids. It's part of it. Yeah, absolutely. Finding ways to make it fun or different, just how to get through a moment. I think creativity can be a great avenue to do that.
I was just gonna say that's where wearing masks right now during the COVID is, it's been good cover for me to like sing to myself, talk to myself, you know what I mean? You can like walk down the street. Like when I take my dog for a walk and I'll be like making up a song or like just that's people sometimes go people go, how do you come up with your comedy bits? And I go, I talk to myself a lot. But I can wear a mask now, so it kind of like gives me cover. It not wearing a mask never stopped me before, by the way. Like I will fully talk to myself if I feel like I need to talk to myself. Some days you need to give yourself a little pep talk, you know what I mean? You're like, all right, Ty, all right, here's what we're doing. This is what we got to do today. Like I do that all day long.
I love it. That's awesome. No, like what a great skill and tool that people can use. That how do you give yourself a pep talk? I mean, I think that more people could benefit from giving themselves a pep talk.
And if you're not good at yourself, then you can message me and I will give you a pep talk.
Oh, perfect. I love it. Well, as we wrap up, I have one more question. And the question is, what would you say your secret to creativity is?
Yeah, that's a big one. I studied improv when I was in college, and there's so many great lessons in improv. So one of the main rules of improv is yes and. So you say yes to everything and then add to it, right? That's how you build a scene in an improv. You say yes, you support your players, but say yes and. And then also one of the things that I learned in improv, we used to always say fire the cop in your head, and that what that meant was the voice that says, oh, don't do that, or oh, I shouldn't, or oh, like makes you second guess. And to be clear, I'm not saying like just let everything that you think fly out of your mouth, but if you're setting yourself into a creative space, whether it's like singing or dancing or music or comedy, like that's the time to say, I'm not going to limit myself. Any idea can be a good idea. And just try to let it, because it's crazy how much we stifle our own selves.
Absolutely.
And it's a challenge to free yourself enough or put yourself in the state of mind that you can just express yourself freely. And that continues to be a challenge even for like me, someone who's been performing for a long time. So just say yes and try to stop stifling yourself.
I love it. That's awesome. And if people want to get in touch with you or learn more about you or find your online shows, stand-up shows, how would they go about doing that?
My name is Tyler Boeh, Boeh, and I am pretty much just Tyler Boeh on all of the things. So if you Google me, Tyler Boeh, you will find me. So I have a Facebook page. That one is actually Tyler Boeh Comedy. But Twitter is @TylerBoeh, Instagram's @TylerBoeh. So I mentioned at the top of the show having to try to move and sort of pivot and do more things creatively online. So about a month ago, I started making a series of videos called This Week in History. And those are on YouTube. My YouTube channel is just Tyler Boeh. And what I do is I research all of, the events and that happened for that week, the big world events, maybe who was born, what happened, and then I try to write a bunch of jokes about it. And so I think put out my like 5th episode of that, and it's been fun. And sort of like you said, it's something I was like, I gotta try something new, and just kind of dove in.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me tonight about creativity. It's been great to see you and catch up, and thank you for all of the pieces that you shared.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Sustaining Creativity Podcast. We'd love to keep in touch, so like us on Facebook and Instagram. We are Sustaining Creativity. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Tag your friends and your family so they can listen too. We love to hear from you, so leave your comments, reviews, and questions. Tune in Tuesdays for a new episode. And remember, with creativity, anything's possible.